Before the consort selection for the Eastern Palace, I was poisoned, lost consciousness in a dark alley, and was violated by a bodyguard named Duan Ming. I once thought Duan Ming was my savior and willingly married into the Duan family as his wife. After our marriage, with my unwavering support, Duan Ming achieved success and fame. On the day he was appointed Grand General, 3 beggars arrived at our door, shamelessly claiming, "I am the true lover of the general's wife," before she married. Furious, I ordered Duan Ming to drive them out. But to my shock, he only sneered and revealed the cruel truth. "That night in the alley, the ones who assaulted you weren't me, but these 3 beggars. I merely picked up a discarded body, never expecting it would bring me fortune and glory." Learning the truth, I was so enraged I could barely breathe. I pulled a hairpin and stabbed him, only to be pushed off a high platform. In agony, I found myself surrounded by the beggars, while Duan Ming stood coldly with his childhood sweetheart in his arms, watching. I died with hatred in my heart. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn, returned to the very night I'd been poisoned. Now, I found myself in the alley, my whole body burning as if set on fire. Realizing I'd been reborn, I immediately drew my hairpin and stabbed it deep into my thigh. The poison running through my veins was called cyanranine, a drug so insidious, it could turn even an immortal into a slave to primal desire once it took effect. Only by inflicting the most excruciating pain could I preserve a fleeting moment of clarity. If not, I'd collapse in that remote alley again, unable to tell whether the thing that defiled me was a man or a ghost. My blurred vision slowly sharpened. Through the night wind, I caught another sound, the suppressed, labored breathing of a man. In my previous life, after I lost my chastity, my body ravaged, I fainted in the alley. It was the bodyguard at the Shen estate, Duan Ming, who found me first. He cradled my disheveled, sullied body and brazenly paraded through the streets, back to the Shen residence. Because of this, the entire capital knew, the only daughter of the Shen family, Shen Qingqi, had lain with a servant in a dark alley that night. Before that night, I'd been a favored candidate to become crown princess. After that night, I was branded a wanton woman, rumored to have had an illicit affair with a servant. For a long time, a length of white silk always lay within reach in my room. Not a day passed when I didn't think of death, hoping to redeem my family's honor. It was the darkest period of my life. Until one day, the crown prince, Fu Yuan, suddenly brought an imperial physician to my residence. He pushed open the door, bringing with him a ray of sunshine I hadn't seen in so long, blinding my eyes already clouded by tears. Fu Yuan asked, "That night, did you ever see the young master?" At that moment, I was mortified, hiding behind layers of curtains, but still remembered the etiquette, bowing my head and replying, "Your body is noble. I would never dare to claim such a thing." Through the thin silk, I seemed to hear him sigh lightly. "Take care of yourself. A woman's virtue is not decided by what lies beneath her skirt, do not debase yourself." He took the white silk from my table and left the physician to treat me. Back then, I thought Fu Yuan was just a kind and upright man. Not until much later did I learn that he too had been harmed that night, drugged, suffering alone in the same remote alley. He'd heard rumors that the Shen family's daughter had been violated there and grew suspicious, afraid he might have committed an unforgivable mistake in his delirium. So he personally came to the Shen residence, seeking confirmation. Upon hearing what happened to me that day in the marketplace, he even brought along a renowned gynecologist from the Imperial Medical Institute. Only after many examinations was he finally assured that he wasn't the man from that night. Now, my gaze lingered on the pile of firewood in front of me. The shame of my previous life returned vividly. I no longer remembered the faces of those men, only that I was pinned down on the woodpile, my body tormented without mercy. Before the 3 beggars and Duan Ming could arrive, I had to escape. The cyanranine poison was truly vicious, my legs were weak, my body felt like melting ice and snow, with no strength to resist. If any man appeared before me at this moment, I doubted I could control myself. I stabbed my left thigh again, using the pain to force out the last bit of strength, and staggered toward the sound I'd heard. I thought it would be difficult to find, but it was only a wall away. Beneath the cold silver moon, a man in luxurious robes leaned against the wall, his handsome face tinged with a faint blush, his pale neck exposed as he threw his head back, struggling for control. He looked like a savior sent by the heavens. If tonight I must lose something, at least let me choose. This was the only chance to change my fate. Like a starving wolf, I threw myself into his arms. The last shred of rationality only managed to glimpse the Dayan pattern at his collar, a symbol of the royal family. At once, my heart settled. In the chaos, I fumbled open the door of a woodshed in the alley, pulling the man inside with me, just to escape those beggars. After that, everything unfolded as naturally as water flowing downhill. His strong hands gripped my body, while I surrendered to the effects of the drug, my body turning to spring water under his touch. Like dry wood meeting a blazing fire, we found each other in desperation, clinging tight, burning together in the flames of our own bodies. When I woke again, the first thing I saw was a muscular, fair chest covered in bite marks and scratches. As if possessed, I reached out to touch it, unable to let go. To my shock, that chest suddenly let out a horrified shout. Shameless! Startled, I snapped to my senses and looked up. Fu Yuan was glaring at me, his eyes wide with both shock and anger, as if he had just been grievously wronged. I reacted instantly, choosing to accuse him first. Who are you? What did you do to me? Fu Yuan frowned and answered coldly. Do you not recognize me? Cunning. Clearly, we'd met at the palace banquet. Of course I recognized the crown prince. In my previous life, only after I was married did I learn that at the consort selection banquet that year, I was the only one Fu Yuan glanced at twice. It was probably because of those two glances that Princess Hua Yin began to suspect and pay attention to me. Mother once told me that Xianren Yin was a drug from the western regions, gifted exclusively to the emperor for training concubines in the inner palace. Only a princess could have access to such a substance. The wine the princess offered me that night must have been tampered with. Duan Ming was only a minor bodyguard in my household, without the princess pulling strings behind the scenes, who would dare defile a noble daughter so brazenly right under the royal city walls. My greatest enemy in this life must be within the palace. So, if I want to survive in this life, I have to cling to the Eastern Palace. Last night's success was only the first step. Now, what I needed to do was dispel all of the Crown Prince's suspicions. At the banquet, I'd sat with the other noblewomen at the lowest tables, my head down the entire time, never daring to look up. So, denying I recognized the Crown Prince was perfectly reasonable, it only made me seem purer and more innocent in his eyes. You're a villain from who knows where. How dare you impersonate the Crown Prince? I shrank back and sobbed loudly, tears and snot streaming down my face, looking as pitiful as possible. You've already wronged me so much, and now you dare impersonate the Crown Prince. The one I cherish most is the Crown Prince, and now you've ruined all my chances, all my hope. I cried so hard it felt like I could bring down the entire dilapidated woodshed. Suddenly, several tall guards burst in from outside. Judging by their uniforms, they were men of the Eastern Palace. Your Highness, we've finally found you. At that moment, Fu Yuan was so flustered by my tears he didn't know what to do. Hey! Stop crying. I really am the Crown Prince, they can prove it. I immediately started making a scene, wailing at the top of my lungs. You're not. The real Crown Prince is wise and valiant, how could he act like a rabid dog, biting people? The real Crown Prince is dignified and handsome, how could he look as slovenly as you? In my heart, the Crown Prince is a hero among heroes, not some shameless, despicable man like you. The guards, who'd just seen Fu Yuan gritting his teeth in anger, now found the corners of their mouths twitching at my string of praise, wise and valiant, dignified and handsome, a hero among heroes. One of them stepped forward, holding out a golden token. Please look carefully, this is the Eastern Palace token. A gleaming golden emblem was held before my tear-stained eyes. Fu Yuan couldn't hide the satisfaction tugging at his lips. Now do you believe me? The palace guards echoed. This is indeed the very person you just called wise, valiant, dignified, handsome, a hero among heroes. I instantly stopped crying and reached for the token, but Fu Yuan pulled it away, just out of reach. Right after, he unexpectedly took my pulse. In just a moment, his brows furrowed. You were drugged too. The current crown prince was renowned for his knowledge of both literature and martial arts, and was skilled in medicine. He'd personally treated commoners and soldiers on the battlefield, earning a reputation for compassion and virtue. All I had to do was let him check my pulse, then pretend to tremble and whisper. Does the crown prince intend to kill me? Fu Yuan let go of my wrist. With his medical skills, he would surely recognize the drug running wild in my body. And that drug, most likely, came from the palace itself. He'd understand, I was just another pitiful pawn dragged into someone else's scheme. I immediately took a step back. Rest assured, I may admire you, but I've never dared dream of reaching for the Eastern Palace. Straightening my clothes, I forced myself to stand, my gaze resolute. As for what happened last night, I swear never to breathe a word. You have nothing to worry about. With that, I staggered out of the room. Fu Yuan didn't stop me, such a cold man. On purpose, I tore my sleeve and left a jade pendant right before his eyes. On that pendant was the Shin family's crest. And my maiden name. I didn't look back, walking straight ahead, never letting him see even the slightest trace of reluctance. If he ever thought I was attached, in his eyes I'd become nothing but easy prey. I stumbled out of the alley, the hem of my dress soaked in blood, my thigh aching with every step. At the alley's end, there stood Duan Ming. The moment he saw me, his face lit up with joy. He dashed over to me like lightning. Weak from blood loss and exhaustion, I fainted in his arms before I could resist. When I came to again, I was in my own bed at the Shin residence. My father's face was ashen with rage, my mother's eyes red from crying. Duan Ming was slapping himself and babbling nonstop. Last night, I saw that Miss had been poisoned. If I hadn't restored the balance of yin and yang, she might have died. I had no choice but to offend propriety. I truly love her, I only want to protect her. If she does not despise me, I would beg to marry her as my lawful wife. He thought I'd forgotten everything due to the drug, so he lied with utter confidence. I spoke weakly. What are you saying? Duan Ming squeezed my hand tightly and declared. Have you forgotten? Last night, after being poisoned, you ran into my arms. I had no choice but to help you restore the balance of yin and yang. His gaze clung to me, unclear whether it was love, warning, or threat. Miss, there's a red mole on your right shoulder, isn't there? Last night, while we were together, I saw it very clearly. I will never forget your beauty for as long as I live. He knelt beside my bed, crying and slapping himself, going on and on about his helplessness and remorse, swearing his deep love. He played the role of the guilty party so convincingly that even my parents hesitated to punish him. The family physician spoke up. It's true. Last night, she was poisoned with a strange aphrodisiac. If it hadn't been neutralized in time, her blood would have run backward and she would have died. That was how it happened in my previous life too, the physician testified, and I remembered nothing. My parents, powerless and defeated, said. In that case, Duan Ming truly saved your life. As merchants, our status was already low. Even though the Shin family was the wealthiest in the empire, among the nobility, we were always lesser. I was of the same age as the crown prince. My parents raised me so carefully, all for the hope that one day I could marry into the Eastern Palace and bring the family glory. But all those hopes vanished in a single night, ruined by a mere gatekeeper. After just one night, my father's hair turned white. The next morning, he went himself to the Eastern Palace and knelt in apology. My name was already on the consort selection list. If this wasn't handled properly, it would be seen as a grave offense, a challenge to the power of the Eastern Palace. Luckily, the palace did not punish us, and Fu Yuan himself visited our house to urge me not to give up hope, to go on living. Duan Ming spent the next few days kneeling in our courtyard, pretending repentance, when in reality, he was pressuring my parents into giving in. For a woman, losing chastity was losing control of her own destiny. In the end, I carried the so-called debt of Duan Ming's life-saving favor and agreed to marry him. Outwardly, it looked as if I was marrying beneath my station, but in truth, it was Duan Ming who got to be the favored son-in-law, moving his coarse old mother into the Grand Shin residence. A lowly servant was transformed overnight, becoming the Shin family's son-in-law, inheriting 3 generations worth of wealth and prosperity. As the only daughter of the Shin family, I lost my chance to enter the Eastern Palace. My parents could only swallow their pride and use all their connections to help Duan Ming advance. With a mountain of gold paving his way, 3 years later, Duan Ming was finally granted a minor general's title for quelling a small rebellion. He was never a man of great talent, his current achievements were already the furthest the Shin family's support could take him. My parents did all they could, just hoping he would treat me well. But on the very day Duan Ming was promoted, he brought those 3 beggars to our home. As soon as they saw me, they shouted, "We are the true lovers of the general's wife, before she was married." Their mouths stank, teeth black as ink, and they laughed coarsely, hurling insults at me in front of everyone, utterly without restraint. At first, I thought they were lunatics come to make trouble and immediately told Duan Ming to drive them out. But to my surprise, Duan Ming's expression changed, the corner of his mouth lifting with a cruel sneer. "Why drive them away? They're not wrong. These 3 beggars aren't just your lovers, they're the reason we're married at all. What are you saying?" He smirked. "Ah, truly the Western region's poison, 3 years have passed, and you're still left in the dark." Right in front of my parents, Duan Ming brazenly exposed the truth. "That night, the ones who violated you weren't me, but these 3 beggars." He even recalled it with perverse delight. "You were truly enchanting that night, but unfortunately already soiled by beggars. I found you filthy, so I lost interest. After all, who would know what happened in a dark alley?" He turned to my father and mother with feigned admiration. "Good father, good mother-in-law, who would have thought you'd treat me as your daughter's savior?" He straightened his general's armor, full of swagger. "In truth, I was just the one who picked up a body the next morning. Yet I got to marry a noble lady and live a life of luxury with empty hands, basking in glory." When my father heard the truth, his blood surged, and he vomited blood on the spot, dying in fury. My mother tried to fight Duan Ming to the death, but he shoved her away, her head slamming against the table's edge, blood pouring down. My whole body went cold. I pulled out my hairpin, ready to fight Duan Ming to the end, but he kicked me off the high platform, my body soaked in blood. Close to death, I saw the 3 beggars slowly closing in. The memory of that night flashed before my eyes. Under the black sky, they tore at my skin, leaving me soaked in shame. I screamed in despair, on the verge of madness, while Duan Ming held his childhood sweetheart and watched coldly, utterly unmoved. That day, Duan Ming declared publicly that after returning from suppressing a rebellion, he discovered his wife had slept with beggars, went mad with shame, killed her parents, then was accidentally killed by him in self-defense. The court was corrupt, the country in chaos, the authorities powerless, no one investigated his absurd lies. So Duan Ming not only kept his rank, but took possession of the Shin family fortune, accumulated over 3 generations. He carried his sweetheart, brought his old mother with him, stepped over my corpse, changed the sign at the Shin residence to read Duan residence, and proclaimed himself the new master. Everything I suffered in my previous life played out again, even after my rebirth. Now, as before, my mother listened to the family physician and, weeping, advised me to swallow my anger. "Qingqi, things are as they are, you can't blame Duan Ming. Accept your fate, my child. It's already the talk of the town." My father, his face grave, said, "If you marry Duan Ming, at least people can say you had a prior engagement, and it will all be legitimate. I'll go to the Eastern Palace to plead for forgiveness. The prince is merciful and won't punish us too harshly. If you don't, it means..." My father gritted his teeth. "You slept with a guard before the consort selection. It's an outrage against morality and the court, a crime punishable by the execution of your entire clan. How could my parents know that the man I slept with last night was none other than the noble prince of the Eastern Palace? Duan Ming believed everything was now certain. His eyes burned with greed as he clutched my hand. For the safety of the whole clan, you'll have to suffer a little and marry me. Everything my parents said made sense. Duan Ming, or rather, the one behind all of this, had calculated that, for the sake of the greater good, the Shen family would endure anything. He held all the cards, but still pretended humility. If you're still angry, just beat me, curse me, I won't resist. Looking at his hypocritical face, I suddenly smiled sweetly. Duan, I said softly, the physician says you saved my life, how could I ever harm my benefactor? I reached out and stroked his face, my voice as gentle as a spring breeze. But, last night, you hurt me terribly. I want to punish you. Will you accept? With my reputation as the most beautiful woman in the capital, a few gentle words were all it took to send Duan Ming's mind spinning. He nodded eagerly. As long as you're no longer angry, I'll accept any punishment. He thought it was just childish pettiness, that a few lashes were a fair price for all he'd gained. My parents did not interfere. Duan Ming was led to the courtyard, forced to lie on his back, his limbs bound by the other guards. He started to feel uneasy. Aren't you going to whip me? Why am I tied up like this? I dragged my exhausted, aching body to his side, the blade of my dagger tapping his cheek as I spoke in the same sweet tone. Because I want to teach you a lesson myself. Duan Ming thought I was only teasing, his foolish smile remained. But soon enough, he couldn't smile anymore. The knife traced a slow line from his cheek to his throat, down his chest, and finally rested just above his groin. He panicked. What are you doing? Didn't you just say you'd accept even if I gave you a single slash? My lips curled in a cold smile. Without warning, I brought the knife down between his legs. Blood splattered everywhere. His shrill screams echoed across the entire Shen residence. A short while later, a bloodied, mutilated man was thrown out at the gates. He writhed on the ground, clutching his ruined body, shrieking in agony. A sharp-eyed bystander laughed and jeered. Hey, look, a new eunuch straight out of the oven. I stepped through the gate, facing the onlookers without fear, and spoke calmly. This guard dared to slander his master's reputation, this is the fate he deserves. Duan Ming's face was ashen from pain. Even as he was dying, he glared at me with venom. You, filthy, shameless woman. I looked at the bloody knife in my hand, considered it for a moment, then tossed it to the ground with disdain. Filth. The only filth here is you. With that single stroke, I severed the very root of Duan Ming's bloodline. Of course, with a single move, that blade could have easily ended Duan Ming's life. But if he died, how would I ever draw out the true mastermind? Among the crowd watching, I noticed someone's expression change before he slipped away, likely off to report to his master. Sure enough, less than an hour later, a maid came to deliver the news. Duan Ming has been dragged away, all that's left is a pool of blood on the ground. In the following days, rumors swept through the capital, growing ever more wild and frenzied. Some said the Shen family's only daughter had been drugged and violated by a lowly gate guard, and in her rage, castrated him in broad daylight. Others whispered she'd had an affair with a servant, then cut him down in cold blood after using him. 100 tales, 1,000 voices, all circling back to a single line. Whatever the truth, the Shen family's heiress has lost her virtue, her only hope for dignity now is to hang herself with a length of white silk. Some snickered and mocked. That Duan really is an inspiration for all us lowborn, just a mere gatekeeper, yet he managed to sleep with the only daughter of a wealthy house. If he got castrated, he had it coming. My parents strictly forbade any servants from gossiping within my hearing, but rumors have a way of finding their way to your ears all the same. The oldest clan elder of the Shen family even had someone bring me a length of white silk, 3 feet long, the meaning needed no explanation. Looking at that ribbon, I remembered my past life, when I had truly considered ending it all. But my parents had only me. They loved me, cared for me in every way. I couldn't bear to leave them alone in this world. In the end, I bit back my shame and married beneath my station, only to ruin my entire family. This time, I put the white silk away with my own hands. The one who deserves to hang is someone else. Everyone thought I wouldn't survive, but I cooperated with the physician, earnestly nursing myself back to health. Compared to my previous life, when my body was left irreparably broken, this time, aside from the wound on my thigh I inflicted myself, the rest was nothing serious. After taking my pulse, the physician gently advised. "Miss, you must avoid any intimacy for now. The poison called cyanranine is insidious. Each time it takes effect, it drains the body's essence tenfold, leaving you weak for months." Yet the prescription I was given worked wonders. Within 3 days, my energy was restored and my strength returned. One day, curiosity led me to lift the corner of the curtain, and only then did I realize, the person treating me was no ordinary physician, but the most renowned female healer of the Imperial Medical Institute, Li Changyu. Li Changyu was the foremost woman physician in the palace, treating only the most distinguished nobles of the royal family. The only one who could invite her, both in this life and the last, was Fu Yuan. "Did the prince send you?" I asked. Li Changyu didn't deny it. "He asked me to pass along his regards and hopes you'll take good care of yourself." Knowing she was no stranger, I lifted the curtain completely. Li Changyu saw my healthy complexion and smiled in relief. "The prince was worried you might lose hope, so he sent me to check on you. Now, seeing your spirit, I know you'll survive this trial," I said calmly. "Chastity is just a shackle imposed by the world. What I want is to break those chains, not put another noose around my neck." Li Changyu nodded. "Your way of thinking is admirable. It's a pity about Miss Lin, abducted by bandits for one night. She returned home only to hang herself. By the time I arrived, she was already gone, and still the world cursed her name." I frowned. "What did they say?" "They blamed her for dying too late. After being violated, they said she should have killed herself right away to prove her innocence. How dare she come home first and hang herself later? A 17-year-old girl, unable to live in peace, not even allowed dignity in death. Even her relatives spat on her, died at home and brought shame on the family name." Li Changyu sighed, her eyes filled with regret and sorrow, as if apologizing for not saving her in time. In my past life, it was Li Changyu who tried to heal my ruined body. She had even hinted, gently, that my injuries didn't look like they came from just one person. Back then, fooled by Duan Ming, I didn't dare think too deeply about it. Li Changyu probably feared I would follow in Miss Lin's footsteps, so she'd never dared to speak plainly. After changing the dressing, I grasped Li Changyu's hand and asked, "Did the prince have any other message for me?" "Only to wish you a full recovery, nothing more." The corner of my mouth curled up. That damnable man. The timing of my rebirth almost seemed like fate's deliberate joke, as if heaven itself wished to play with me one more time. That night, accusing the prince was my only choice. The situation was so out of my control, half my gamble was already placed on Fu Yuan. Li Changyu raised her head. "Is there anything you want me to say to the prince?" By this point, there was nothing left to say. Sometimes, retreating a step is only to take 3 steps forward. I hadn't forgotten that lesson. Li Changyu smiled. "Then that's the message I'll take back to the prince." After the physician left, my mother came in to see me. At last, she couldn't hold back and asked, "Chi, tell me, who was it that night?" "Mother, I really was taken by force, but it wasn't Duan Ming." "Then who? Who drugged you, who violated you?" "You still won't tell us." "Chi, you must, so your father and I can plan for your future." Before my mother could finish, the maid burst in with urgent news. "Madam, miss. Something's happened. Princess Hua Yin has arrived, and Duan Ming is with her." I grabbed my mother's wrist and said firmly, "Mother, very soon, you'll know the whole truth. The man from that night, he will come for me today." That this incident reached the palace didn't surprise me. To lose my virtue before the consort selection was a direct challenge to the royal family, a slight to the crown prince. So it was only natural for Princess Hua Yin to come to the Shen residence to demand an explanation. The princess sat upon her phoenix palanquin, the entire Shen family kneeling in welcome. Rise. With those words, I finally dared to stand and look up at her. This was the second time I'd met Princess Hua Yin. 10 days earlier, at the palace banquet, she'd offered me a cup of fine wine. When I bowed my head in thanks, I caught a glimpse of her for the first time. Now, I looked closely at the princess whose name resounded throughout the land. She was in her 30s. Most princesses of her station, married off to officials or sent as diplomatic brides, had been married by 20. Only Princess Hua Yin remained unmarried, and the emperor had never pressed her. Countless petitions to request her hand had been submitted over the years, but the emperor dismissed them all. The princess was dazzlingly beautiful, dressed in luxurious brocade, her hair heavy with jewels. Reclining indolently in her palanquin, she looked like a peony in full bloom, languid, seductive, her eyes full of weary disdain for the world. Duan Ming, only recently castrated, was hunched over, wailing in a sharp, broken voice. Princess. Shen Qingqi had an illicit affair with me in the alley before the consort selection. When the secret came out, she took cruel revenge. She's trying to claw her way into the Eastern Palace, deceiving both the prince and the emperor. Please, princess, punish her and wipe out her whole clan. A man who's lost his future will twist and rot inside. There was no pretense of affection left, only hatred so fierce he wished he could kill me on the spot. The princess lifted her gaze. Shen Qingqi, do you admit your guilt? I answered her with a question of my own. I was framed, drugged, and violated. I am the victim here. Princess, may I ask, what crime have I committed? The princess showed no guilt. To her, I was as insignificant as an ant. Even if she pushed me to death, it would only amuse her. I don't care about your twisted stories. The fact remains, you had an affair before the consort selection. For that alone, I could have you killed. With a wave of her hand, 2 palace maids stepped forward. One carried a crimson silk ribbon, red as blood. The other, a pale, ghostly white silk. You have 2 choices, the princess said coolly. Either agree to marry Duan Ming, I'll personally host your wedding. Or hang yourself and preserve what's left of your reputation. My parents fell to their knees, begging. Please, princess, show mercy. Duan Ming is now a eunuch, how could he possibly marry? And so what if he's a eunuch? The princess laughed, her voice light and cruel. Eunuchs can be proper couples too. You'll just have to live without bedroom fun. Miss Shen, I'm sure you can manage. With the princess behind him, Duan Ming became bold again. Isn't it all your fault I was castrated? Shen Qingqi, you destroyed me, now you can spend the rest of your life serving me. I won't marry. My voice rang out clear and strong. Duan Ming's indenture is still in the hands of the Shen family. According to Daikai law, if a servant commits a crime, the master has full right to punish him. For serious offenses, he can even be executed in the inner courtyard, no need for the authorities. If Duan Ming dares step through the Shen gates, even with the princess as his shield, I'll make sure there's nowhere left to bury him. How dare you defy me? The princess snapped. I would not dare, I said, but let me remind the princess, the laws of Daikai were handed down by our ancestors. Princess, you wouldn't want to defy their will and earn a bad name, would you? Hua Yin straightened in her seat, her exquisite features flashing with anger before a cold smile curled her lips. So clever with words. If you won't marry, then you'll take the second path. The pale silk was placed before me. You admit yourself that you lost your chastity that night. By Daikai law, any woman who loses her virtue before the consort selection has shamed the royal family and broken the law. The emperor himself once declared, such women should hang themselves with white silk, to preserve their honor. Once, this had only been a private punishment. But the current emperor, when he came to the throne, made it official. A woman who lost her chastity was now, in the eyes of the law, no different from a murderer or arsonist. I used the law to fight the princess, she used the law to press me back down. What's more, you had an affair with your lover, one crime atop another. As a favor, I grant you this white silk, at least you'll have a whole corpse to bury. Duan Ming, escort your mistress to her final journey. Duan Ming, seizing his chance for revenge, grabbed the ends of the white silk and advanced on me step by step. My parents knelt on the ground, banging their heads, begging for mercy, but were held down by the palace guards. I tried to struggle, but my arms were pinned behind me by two burly women. One seized my hair, wrenching my head up, waiting for the noose to tighten around my throat. So high and mighty, Duan Ming sneered, eyes filled with venom. In the end, you fall into my hands. If I don't choke the life out of you today, I'm not Duan. Just as the silk tightened, I shouted. You can't kill me. I am pregnant. At that, Hua Yin seemed to be struck in her heart's sorest spot. She burst into laughter, but her eyes blazed with even more deadly intent. Pregnant. So what? You think I'll go easy just because you're carrying a child? If anything, a double execution is more fitting. The child in my belly is no bastard. It's royal blood. What did you say? Isn't this what the princess wants to know, who touched me that night? Under the princess's tense, expectant gaze, I spoke out, my voice ringing. The man I spent the night with was none other than the crown prince, Fu Yuan. The room fell silent. Everyone was struck dumb, my parents gaping, speechless. Duan Ming went wild, shrieking. She's insane. Daring to dream of the crown prince. It was me. It was me that night. I stared directly at the princess's stunned face, enunciating every word. As it happens, the crown prince was drugged that night too, ended up lost in that same alley. Princess, I'm sure you know the truth better than anyone, don't you? Hua Yin's face went pale for a split second. Of course she knew, the drug was her doing, no one knew that better than she did. I barked at the two women holding me. There's royal blood in my belly. Who dares lay a hand on me now? The two women froze, their hands trembling, their grip weakening. Seizing the chance, I broke free from their hold and retreated, standing tall and defiant, even as my heart pounded with fear. Of course, I wasn't pregnant at all, it was just a desperate lie, a last-ditch stalling tactic. It was a flimsy story, one anyone could see through if they stopped to think for even a moment. What I didn't expect was that the first to catch the flaw was not those seasoned matronly attendants, but Hua Yin herself, a woman who had never been married. Shen Qingqi, it's not even been 10 days since that night. How could you possibly be pregnant so soon? Someone, check her pulse, see if it's true. The imperial physician accompanying the princess stepped forward. Miss Shen, please give me your hand. Under my sleeve, I clenched my palm tightly, sweat already beading on my skin. The physician urged me again. It will be obvious with a single check. Please, your hand. What's the hesitation? Are you feeling guilty? Duan Ming pressed forward, shouting. I told you. Shen Qingqi's gone mad trying to become crown princess. Now she's even pretending to be pregnant with the prince's child. Ridiculous. She's insane. Just strangle her and be done with it. The physician repeated. Miss Shen, your hand, please. If my pulse was checked, my lie would be exposed in an instant. I'd played all my cards. I glanced at the doorway. Suddenly, a pair of warm hands pressed against my wrist, right over my pulse point. I jolted, sure my deception had been discovered, only to hear a gentle voice chuckle. She's pregnant, without a doubt. I looked up in shock, expecting to see some fraud. Instead, I met the striking, confident face of Fu Yuan. His broad hand wrapped around my wrist, enveloping my smaller one completely. The physician who'd been beside me was pushed aside, and the guards that once ringed the Shen residence were now replaced by the elite of the Eastern Palace. Fu Yuan still gripped my wrist, a carefree smile tugging at his lips. Well played, Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi, that was my childhood name. A chill ran through me, then, suddenly, a wave of relief. Internally, I cursed him. That wretched crown prince always shows up at the very last moment. Fu Yuan, of course, knew perfectly well I wasn't pregnant. His hand slid from my wrist down to my palm, his long fingers intertwining with mine, 10 fingers locked together. He held my hand up for all to see and announced to Huayin. The person who met Shinqing that night in a haze of wine was me. And the child in her womb carries my blood. Fu Yuan's tone was openly arrogant, a little wild, perfectly self-assured. If you have any complaints, royal sister, write a memorial, seal it with your title, and send it to the Eastern Palace. I'll read it whenever I'm free. Fu Yuan was the crown prince, son of the empress herself, a man of noble birth and remarkable achievement. He went to war at 15, reclaimed 13 border cities for Daikai. By 17, he managed the imperial cabinet, rooting out corruption. He had ruled as regent for 3 years now, wielding power and enjoying unrivaled prestige. The whole realm said Fu Yuan was Daikai's future, the hope of the people. As for Huayin, she was only the daughter of a favored dancer from the emperor's travels. She was recognized by the royal family at 5, but without a powerful family to back her, she could never truly compete with the crown prince. No matter how favored she was by the emperor, she had to bow before Fu Yuan's authority. She could play tricks behind the scenes, but in open conflict, she had to back down. Huayin's face twisted with conflicting emotions. You would do this, knowing it violates all proper conduct. Fu Yuan was quick to answer. Shinqing was already chosen for the consort selection. That night was a legitimate union. If you want to report this to the emperor, then maybe someone should also look into who tampered with the wine at the palace banquet, who caused Shinqing and me to lose control. He might as well have torn off her mask. He came close to naming Huayin outright. Clearly, he'd already uncovered a great deal. Huayin, with guilt in her heart, lost her nerve and shrank back in silence. Duan Ming, unwilling to accept defeat, tried one last time. Your Highness. Don't be fooled by Shinqing. Even if it wasn't me that night, it must have been one of those beggars. Before he could finish, a cold sword flashed and ran him through the throat. The sword stroke was merciless, final, and filled with killing intent. Duan Ming's eyes bulged, staring blankly down at his nearly severed neck as blood fountained out, chaos erupting all around. Even Princess Huayin tumbled from her palanquin in terror. Fu Yuan withdrew his sword, stepped on Duan Ming's corpse, and wiped the blade clean, his gaze icy as he stared at the princess. The consort selection is not your concern anymore. If you insist on meddling, beware. Swords do not care whose blood they spill. The grandeur with which the princess had entered the Shen residence was nothing compared to the mess with which she left. The men carrying her palanquin were so shaken, they nearly tripped over the threshold. The princess all but fled in humiliation. Duan Ming's corpse lay at my feet. My legs felt heavy as lead. Fu Yuan gave the body a careless kick, then turned to reassure my parents. Don't worry, he's dead. Very dead. We're not afraid of the dead, my parents stammered, it's Your Highness we're terrified of. Fu Yuan glanced at me, raising an eyebrow. Stop pretending. Didn't I just hear someone call me a wretched crown prince? You must have misheard, ha, ha. I tried to laugh it off, hoping to change the subject, but he grabbed my collar and hauled me away like a chicken. Pregnant and still running wild, what are you thinking? I just said whatever came to mind. Oh. You dare claim to be carrying my child. That's a crime punishable by extermination of your entire clan, you know. I scowled. If you hadn't arrived so late, what else was I supposed to do? He smirked. I was late on purpose. Fu Yuan suddenly took out the jade pendant engraved with my name. You really think I didn't see through your retreat to advance trick? My heart skipped a beat, of course he saw through me. That night in the alley, I could have kept things under control. But you, like a starving wolf, you were the one who threw yourself at me, made me lose my composure. Then you had the nerve to play the victim first, acting like you never dared dream of the Eastern Palace, and even tossed your jade pendant behind, as if you were afraid I couldn't find you. Too clumsy, too obvious. Chi, have you never tried seducing a man before? Every move, every scheme I'd made, he had seen right through, there wasn't a crack left uncovered. No wonder he'd ignored me these past days. He'd wanted to see just how far I could manage on my own. So, are you going to kill me, then? I asked. What fun would that be? He replied. The consort selection is in 3 days. You'd better be there. I stood frozen, realization dawning. I'd cast out my bait, and even though he'd seen through the entire setup, he was still willing to take the hook. Why? I'd calculated and maneuvered against him every step, yet he showed not a shred of resentment. If it hadn't been you that night, he said, it would have been someone from the princess's side, surely. If it had to be anyone. I would rather it be you, Chi. He paused, then smiled and leaned in, his breath brushing my ear. Do you remember, that night, how you clung to my arm and kept calling me your savior? His scent, cool sandalwood from his robes, drifted to me as he leaned close. My ears burned, my cheeks flushed, but I steadied myself and spoke honestly. If it hadn't been for you that night, I would have been better off dead. You truly were my savior. He looked at me, his gaze deep. Sometimes, he said quietly, I dream the same dream. In the dream, the one who saves me, is you. He pressed a golden Eastern Palace token into my hand, then turned away, leaving only a light remark. Remember to attend the consort selection in 3 days. You need to make an appearance, at least for propriety's sake. I looked down at the solid gold token, engraved with Eastern Palace cloud motifs and the name Zhao Lin. Fu Yuan's courtesy name, which meant sunlight shining over Daikai. He was the sovereign the world longed for, the savior king of legend. But such a man, in my previous life, was driven by Princess Hua Yin to the point of taking his own life. I could still recall the cold, rainy night from my past life, as if it were yesterday. Duan Ming had gone off to suppress bandits, and I, praying for his safety, had gone to the temple. The day I left, the skies were clear. By the time I returned, the palace was in chaos. That coup had been orchestrated by Princess Hua Yin. When I reached the city, the turmoil was almost over. Defeated soldiers had taken me hostage, and Zhao Lin ordered a ceasefire for my sake. Princess Hua Yin laughed. For the sake of one woman, you'd show such mercy. No wonder everyone says, if you take the throne, Daikai will enjoy 100 years of peace. But it's a shame, Zhao Lin, you won't live to see it. Under the moonlight, I caught sight of Zhao Lin through a thin curtain. 3 years. 3 years since I'd last seen him. 3 years, long enough for the once radiant crown prince to be marked by sorrow, his hair streaked with white. 3 years earlier, Zhao Lin had been drugged in that alley. Only a day after that, at the consort selection, the chosen one was Miss Lin, the adopted daughter of a noble family. The rumors said that on the night the prince was drugged, Miss Lin was the one who helped him through the ordeal. For the sake of her reputation, and in gratitude, she was named Crown Princess. After their marriage, Miss Lin bore him a son and a daughter, but both died young, not living past their first year. The physicians said their bodies were weak by nature. It was said Zhao Lin loved his children dearly, and the pain of losing them as infants cut deeper than any miscarriage. After that, Zhao Lin's health only declined. The physicians found no cause except grief. Even so, just a year before the end, he forced himself to the front lines, personally leading the campaign to repel the northern invaders. When he returned victorious, more white had appeared in his hair. When exhaustion finally wore him down, Hua Yin seized the moment to expand her power, launching her coup on a stormy night while the emperor was gravely ill. But she still failed. In the darkness, Zhao Lin fired a single arrow, piercing the forehead of the traitor who held me hostage. He saved me from danger, I hadn't even managed to thank him. Lin, now crown princess, rushed forward, kneeling and begging Zhao Lin to spare Hua Yin's life. The princess seemed to submit, but as she was led away, she whispered something to Zhao Lin. That night was utter chaos. I heard her words clearly, yet somehow I can never remember what she said. Maybe it was a provocation, maybe a threat. Zhao Lin's face went ghostly pale. He swayed, suddenly coughed up a mouthful of black blood, his body nearly collapsing. The princess and Lin Nantian were taken away. I rushed to support him, but he just looked at me, his eyes filled with heartbreak and regret, and whispered. That spring, at the banquet, we met. My heart lurched. I stepped forward, but he motioned me away. He handed me an umbrella, telling me to go home, and not to look back. Suddenly, the rain poured down in torrents, a blade's edge slicing a lock of hair from his temple. Shocked, I spun around just in time to see Zhao Lin raise his sword and, with his own hand, cut his throat. His blood, mixed with the rain, spilled over the cold ground of Daikai. That night, the people of Daikai lost their last glimmer of hope. Later, Crown Princess Lin drank poison and took her own life. Princess Hua Yin went mad with laughter before throwing herself from the city walls. Emperor Yuan, crushed by grief, soon fell ill and died. The new emperor was Prince Qing, a man of mediocre talent and questionable virtue, barely able to hold together the crumbling foundation left by his forebears. From that moment, Daikai began to wither, decaying day by day. Half a year later, disaster struck my own family, but the authorities didn't so much as blink. Soon after my death, Daikai, robbed of Zhao Lin, was utterly powerless, the city gates broken open by the Northern Coalition. And so, the dynasty entered its final act, decline, and then destruction. Now, I ran my fingers over the Eastern Palace token, tracing the engraved characters Zhao Lin, and silently watched Fu Zhao Lin's upright figure bathed in sunlight, alive, proud, and full of spirit. In my previous life, I'd always known the Crown Prince was a good man. That's why, in this life, I had shamelessly cast blame on him and used him for my own survival. I once believed he had no idea, and was even smug that my schemes went undetected. Now I realize, he was simply too tolerant. He'd seen through all my plans, yet still reached out to save me at the critical moment. Knowing I had no way out, he gave me an escape route. Understanding how cruel the world could be to women, he let me keep my dignity and my name. This time, perhaps my fate had changed. But what about Fu Zhaolin? What did Princess Hua Yin say that could drive a man like him to such despair? Why did he fall gravely ill? Why did his hair turn silver? Why did he end it all with a blade? Now, fate had tangled me and the Crown Prince together. I would not, could not, let him repeat that same tragedy. I hurried after him. If you trust me, Your Highness, send someone to investigate the ties between Princess Hua Yin and the Duke's household over the past few years. My family could never touch the connection between the princess and the Duke, but the Eastern Palace can. All I need to do is point you in the right direction. Before he could even ask why, I said bluntly. The Crown Princess will one day be Empress, and her children the next rulers. The princess interferes in your selection only to aim for the throne, and the Duke's household is her only support. Years ago, it was thanks to the Duke that Hua Yin was brought back to the palace. In my past life, she relied on the Duke's support to dare launch a coup. Suddenly, realization dawned on him. You knew I would come today. I didn't deny it. You're clever enough. Sooner or later, you'd discover Princess Hua Yin was behind the alley plot. I believed, without a doubt, that you would sweep in to rescue me at the final hour. I spoke proudly. Because, we have a common enemy, and a common interest. Fu Yuan reached out and gently pinched my ear, laughing as he teased. You little fox. Duan Ming was dead, cut down by the Crown Prince himself. Rumors on the street instantly shifted. Now, everyone spoke of the fateful meeting between me and the prince. Duan Ming became the villain, a lackey rightly despised by all. My name was restored. Throughout Daikai, it was accepted that I was destined to be crown princess. All that remained was the formal ceremony. On the day of the selection, my mother did my hair herself, her face beaming with pride. Gone were the worries, she kept praising my good fortune, that out of disaster came blessing. The crown prince is someone you can depend on for life. I'm so happy for you. Your father hasn't stopped smiling for days. Yet as I gazed at my reflection, a vague unease twisted in my chest. That feeling was proven right on the way to the Eastern Palace. Crowds surged through the streets, shouting, "Miss Lin is going to jump." I stepped out of the carriage and followed, only to see the crown princess of my previous life, Lin Nantian, daughter of the Duke, standing atop the high city wall, draped in a scarlet wedding dress, shouting. That night, it was me. I was the one who helped the prince. The woman from the Shin family is a fraud. In my previous life, it was precisely the incident in that alley that had let Miss Lin into the Eastern Palace. That night in the rain, when the coup failed, she had knelt and begged the prince to spare the princess, proving their collusion. It was all clear now. At the palace banquet that day, just because the prince looked at me twice, Princess Hua Yin decided to wipe me out. She poisoned my wine, set beggars on me, had a guard pretend to confess, destroyed my reputation, and forced me into a lowly marriage. Most crucially, she needed to sever the prince's affection for me, paving the way for Lin Nantian to become crown princess. The princess's scheme had been flawless. But this time I had shattered it. What I saw now was the desperate move of someone backed into a corner. Lin Nantian, brilliant in red, stood atop the city wall for all to see, playing the victim, as if she had no choice but to end her life. Shin Qingqi is a fraud. The title of crown princess should have been mine. I'm no longer clean, only death can restore my honor. Princess Hua Yin would never let me go so easily, nor would she spare Fu Yuan. On the surface, Lin's public scene was aimed at me, but the real target was the Eastern Palace. The moment I arrived, I became the focus of the entire crowd. Lin Nantian stared down at me, her posture tragic, her gaze pitiful, but her sleeves trembled, and her hand clung tight to the edge of the wall. Her suicide was nothing but a show, a ploy to make a spectacle and force the Eastern Palace to compromise. If you claim I'm a fraud, then answer me, Miss Lin, did you see the wound on the prince's chest that night? She called down. Of course I saw it. It was deep, heartbreaking to behold. The palace guards shouted back. The prince's wound isn't on the right, it and Oppo's, S on the left, over his heart. Lin Nantian instantly changed her tune. Yes, it was over his heart. It was dark, I remembered wrong. I gave a cold laugh. Survived a wound to the heart, did he? Miss Lin, did you think the crown prince was some kind of immortal? A noble daughter of the Duke's family, yet you dare tell such blatant lies before the entire world. Have you no care left for your own reputation? A ripple of laughter swept through the crowd below. Lin Nantian's face burned crimson with humiliation. She glared and snapped at me. Shin Qingqi, you really are a merchant's daughter, how coarse your tongue, airing the crown prince's private affairs in public. Perhaps, Miss Lin, you should ask yourself, just now, in front of everyone, you openly slandered the prince. Do you realize what crime that is? While Lin Nantian faltered, the palace guards quickly stormed up the steps and dragged her down from the city wall. Before long, a eunuch appeared, leading the imperial guards. He brought an edict from the emperor, summoning Lin Nantian to the palace to explain herself. We were taken together to the Eastern Palace. Emperor Yuan was already seated at the head of the hall, Princess Hua Yin beside him. The chosen maidens stood in two silent rows, waiting. When Fu Yuan saw me enter, the corners of his lips curled in a faint smile. After the formal greetings, Princess Hua Yin smiled graciously and asked, Miss Lin, why did you, on the day of the consort selection, don a wedding dress and threaten suicide? Was there some unbearable injustice weighing on your heart? Speak, and let the emperor be your judge. Lin Nantian, teary-eyed, answered. Your Majesty, please judge fairly. At the palace banquet that night, with the crown prince. She choked as if burdened by some immense grievance, raising her voice. It was Shin Qingqi who was the impostor. She's deceived everyone. Your Majesty, I said, stepping forward after bowing. The first to slander me was a guard from my own household. that man was personally executed by the crown prince. Princess Huayin's smile turned mocking. If not the guard, then who? Who could be lower or filthier than a servant? Bring forth the Lin family's witnesses. At her signal, 3 beggars were dragged before the throne. The stench they brought with them made the entire hall reel. In a flash, I was hurled back into the filth and terror of my past life. My stomach twisted, my hands and feet trembled, I felt as if I was drowning in icy water. Only when my fingernails dug into my palms hard enough to draw blood did I force myself to steady my nerves, biting my lips as I stared at those filthy, vile men. I fought down my disgust, reminding myself again and again. That suffering was from my past life. I'd escaped it now. I must let it go. But Lin Nanshan's reaction was even stronger than mine. She immediately turned away and dry-heaved, face gone pale as death. It was obvious, those 3 beggars were meant for me. Miss Shen, have you really forgotten the pleasure you took that night in the alley? We 3 served you, didn't you enjoy it? You still had the strength to go looking for the crown prince afterward. Or did you just find us beggars disgusting? Everything out of their mouths was filthy slander, meant to destroy my name. When 3 men unite in such accusations against a woman, no matter how absurd their story, the world finds it easier to believe them than her. Fu Yuan barked in fury. How dare you cause such a scene in the Eastern Palace? I gently placed my hand on his arm, which was trembling with anger, and fixed my gaze on one of the beggars whose limbs were mottled with sores. Then I asked, Your Highness, you're skilled in medicine, can you tell what those rashes on that man's arms are? Fu Yuan blinked, startled by my composure, but under my determined look, he could only sigh and answer. It's syphilitic rash, highly contagious. With close contact, you'd immediately develop similar symptoms. Without hesitation, I rolled up my sleeve, revealing my smooth, unblemished skin. That evidence was more powerful than any argument. The entire hall went silent for a few seconds, then, one by one, eyes shifted, suspicion toward me vanished. There were only a few faint whispers. A merchant's daughter, hardly suited for palace etiquette. I smiled calmly. If I worried about such trivialities, I'd already be dead, unjustly accused and buried by now. Without another word, I turned and faced Lin Nantian, forcing her back step by step. Miss Lin, just now you loudly claimed you 2 were in that alley that night. On the city wall, you were caught in a lie. Now you slander me again, and once more your lies are exposed. A person whose every word is false, who, if not you, is trying to bring down the Eastern Palace. Lin Nantian shrank back, clutching her heavy wedding sleeves around her hands, her collar pulled high. The more she hid, the more suspicious she became. I suddenly seized her arm. Do you dare? Dare to do as I have, bare your arm and prove your innocence. I was taller than her. At this angle I could already glimpse, behind her raised collar, a scattering of red sores on her neck. The emperor, impatient, immediately ordered 2 palace maids to restrain Lin Nantian and strip back her layers of sleeves. Sure enough, her arms were mottled with the same dreadful rash as the beggars. This time, the one shamed by beggars, was Lin Nantian. That night, I dragged Fu Yuan away to hide in a woodshed. The beggars couldn't find me, but stumbled upon Lin Nantian, sent to the alley by design, in search of the prince. When the lust of such wretches was aroused, your rank meant nothing, princess or daughter of the duke, it was all the same. Just now, when I saw Lin Nantian nearly retch at the sight of those beggars, I suspected as much. The fact that she kept her wrists and collar covered only confirmed it. In my previous life, I too had caught that disgusting rash. Duan Ming had mocked me as diseased on our wedding night. Now, the truth was undeniable. Lin Nantian clutched her arm in horror. Under the cold, contemptuous gazes of all present, she stumbled to her knees before Princess Huayin, her voice thick with shame. Princess! You planned all this. Please, please help me. But Princess Huayin only looked on in revulsion, kicking Lin Nantian aside. As if slandering the prince wasn't enough, now you'd slander me too. So much for the princess's motherly love for her own flesh and blood. Even the emperor's face changed at those words. Lin Nantian spun around, staring at me in disbelief. What did you say? Miss Lin, haven't you noticed? Your features and eyes are almost identical to the princess's. 15 years ago, the duke's household brought back a young girl from a countryside estate. At the same time, Princess Hua Yin was recuperating at that very estate. That was the only clue the Eastern Palace ever uncovered. Truthfully, everything I'd said was just conjecture. Lin Nantian was 18 this year, Princess Hua Yin was only 30, there was no way they could be mother and daughter. I only wanted to stir the waters, to plunge the hall into deeper chaos. But just then, Emperor Yuan, seated on his throne, exploded with rage. Hua Yin! How dare you abuse your authority, meddle in the crown prince's consort selection, such brazen insolence. Guards, seize the princess and Lin Nantian, and lock them both in the forbidden palace. Father, what are you so afraid of? It was as if a seal had been ripped open. Princess Hua Yin suddenly burst out laughing, her voice ringing out before the assembled court. That's right. Lin Nantian is my own flesh and blood. Now, guess, who do you think her father is? It was as if she'd been waiting years for someone to break her silence. All it took was a single spark, and the dam burst. She would rather see everything destroyed than keep any more secrets. Princess Hua Yin fixed her gaze on Emperor Yuan, her eyes cold and sharp as knives. 18 years, father, have you really forgotten? In that moment, I realized. Not only did Lin Nantian resemble the princess, but if you looked closely, her whole face was startlingly similar to the emperor's. Emperor Yuan's rage shook the pillars. He shot up and roared. The princess is mad. Slap her mouth. Drag her away. She is to be imprisoned for life. Still raving, the princess spat blood as the eunuchs, on the emperor's command, struck her face with bamboo boards until her mouth was a mess of blood. Only after she'd been beaten senseless did she finally fall silent, limp as a dead fish. The emperor was truly furious, and in the iron grip of imperial power, I found myself helpless and exposed. To stumble upon such filth by accident, if the emperor wanted to silence me too, I'd have little hope of escape. Who could have guessed things would descend into such madness? The sound of bamboo slapping still echoed in the hall as my heart pounded with fear, my hands cold as ice. Just then, strong arms pulled me into a steady embrace. Startled, I looked up. It was Fu Yuan. He drew me close, shielding me in his arms, a gesture of utter protection. No matter what happened, in that moment, it was only in his embrace that I felt any true sense of safety. The punishment ended. The princess was dragged out of the hall. As she passed by, she curled her bloodied lips in a half-smile and whispered to me. How did the immortal aphrodisiac taste? Was it pleasant? When father used it on me. Princess Hua Yin's eyes blazed with a mix of hatred and indescribable pain. That year. I was only 10 years old. At last, I remembered what she'd said to the crown prince in my previous life. Your precious crown princess, Lin, is the monster born of me and your father's sin. Under the thunderstorm, the truth had come crashing down on Zhao Lin. The woman he married was his half-sister, sharing the same father. Their 2 children were doomed from the start. And that wife, poisoned by the princess's whispers, had been slipping poison into his food and drink for years. The father he revered had violated his own sister. And Zhao Lin, unaware, had been caught in the middle of that tangled, monstrous web, tainted bloodline, betrayal, poisoned by his own wife, losing 2 children, growing weak and sick, exhausting the last of his strength on the battlefield. He had never done wrong, yet fate, and those around him, had pushed him to his death. The moment Zhao Lin raised his sword and ended his own life in the pouring rain, Princess Hua Yin's laughter rang madly through the storm as she screamed at the emperor who had just arrived. Father! Your finest son is dead, killed by me, and by your own monster's hand. This time, everything that had once crushed Fu Yuan, I'd managed to stop in time. Yet, someone still had to suffer. Emperor Yuan seethed with the urge to cut out Princess Hua Yin's tongue, wishing only to salvage a last scrap of dignity. Lin Nantian, after learning the full truth, collapsed in ruin, sobbing with a broken heart. All the maidens present that day, witnesses to the royal family's disgrace, trembled, heads bowed in terrified silence. Fu Yuan's face was ashen, even he could not bear such a truth. If it hadn't been me that night, but Lin Nantian, all that filth and horror, all those dreadful truths, would eventually have pierced straight through Zhao Lin's heart, driving him to the edge. Thankfully, disaster was averted, because I'd changed everything. Fu Yuan suddenly embraced me, clutching me tightly, refusing to let go. I keep having the same dream, he whispered. In the dream, I end my life in the rain, and you burst through the storm, grabbing the sword from my hand. That dream was right, Shinqing Qi, you are my savior. Just like in my last life, this consort selection ended in chaos. I became crown princess, chosen by the prince's own hand. But the look Emperor Yuan gave me that day was full of murderous intent. Because I had spoken the unspeakable, because I'd ruined the emperor's reputation. No wonder Princess Hua Yin was never married off. Perhaps even on the eve of the consort selection, she was nothing more than Emperor Yuan's plaything. That was the life she'd endured for nearly 20 years. That day, the princess looked like a pitiful puppet. Yet looking back, I realized it was my words that broke her, the final straw that drove her mad. The emperor wanted me dead. Fu Zhaolin entered the palace and confronted the emperor in the imperial study for an entire day, finally forcing a decree appointing me as crown princess. He told me, "Father is old now. There are some things, he must listen to me. If not, who will safeguard his reputation after he's gone?" He used the royal family's own scandal to force Emperor Yuan to yield, to keep me and the child I carried. Because now, the fate of Daikai rested fully in Fu Zhaolin's hands. It was no longer in the grip of that old beast Emperor Yuan. The day I was officially made crown princess, Fu Yuan himself took my pulse, and for the first time, heard the real rhythm of life within me. Princess Hua Yin had once declared that after only 10 days, it was impossible for a pregnancy to be detected by pulse. She knew, for she herself had been a mother, at only 12 years old. That was why, more than the palace midwives, she knew my claim that day was a lie. But now, over a month had passed, and that lie had become truth. Fu Yuan was overjoyed, lifting me up and spinning me around 3 times like a child's top. He truly loved children. Perhaps that's why, in my past life, losing 2 children had broken him so deeply, wounding even his body. He was my savior. And now, both I and this child, had become his. Once everything was settled, I went to visit Lin Nantian at the Duke's manor. It was only then I learned she was living in a shabby, converted woodshed. Princess Hua Yin, who hated Emperor Yuan, of course hated the child carrying his blood as well. She brought Lin Nantian into the Duke's household, quietly allowing everyone there to mistreat this bastard, as if she could vent her hatred at her own father, even in her weakest years. By the time Lin Nantian became aware, the princess donned a mask of kindness, showing herself as benefactor and protector, bringing pretty dresses and palace cakes. Those who have lived in suffering will cherish even the smallest crumb of sweetness, and offer up gratitude without bounds. So when the crown prince was to select his bride, Lin Nantian followed all the princess's arrangements. She prepared to enter the Eastern Palace, poison the prince's body, use 2 children to torment his mind. She knew the plan would hurt herself too, but didn't care. She believed if she did everything perfectly, the princess would love her more. But in my past life, all she received was a final dose of poison, her life ended by her own hand. This time, what lay before her was the same white silk that once lay before me. I had known, from the age of 4, that I was an extra, living off the grace of others. The true heiress of the Duke's family was spoiled and cherished in the arms of her mother. How I envied her. I too once longed for a mother's embrace. Lin Nantian hugged the white silk, turning her head to look at the sunlight outside the window. But my mother only ever saw me as a tool for revenge. She was the one who sent me to that alley that night, and the one who called those 3 beggars. She gave a bitter smile, extending her arm, revealing the red blotches still not healed. She raised the white silk, intending to throw it over a beam, but I snatched it away just in time. Princess, she too is someone to be pitied. If you must hate, don't hate only her. If you must hate, hate the one who sits upon the Daean throne, the beast who violated a young girl. We may never shake the heavens, but only if you keep living, is there hope of seeing justice done. I put away the white silk and pulled Lin Nantian outside. We walked out into the sunlight, all the way to the grand market before the imperial city. There, the execution platform awaited. The 3 beggars were dragged up to be hanged. Those who deserved the noose were not you. It was them. The Eastern Palace had arranged everything. With the Dali Court's agreement, those 3 beggars met an end more wretched than any common criminal. Watching the scene, Lin Nantian suddenly turned to me and said, "So that's what it looks like, death by hanging. Even the tongue sticks out. It's so ugly." I handed her a prescription for the syphilitic rash. "Take this as directed. Within a year, you'll recover. They all say it's hard to cure. It is. In my past life, I searched everywhere for famous physicians, endured acupuncture and medicinal baths for 2 years before finding this prescription. I had a distant cousin who once suffered the same disease. This cured her. So trust me. Don't give up. You saw with your own eyes, death by hanging, it's truly, truly ugly." Lin Nantian stared at me, astonished, and asked softly, "Why would you help me?" I smiled and asked in return, "We're both women, why wouldn't we help each other?" In the sunlight, she stood silent for a long while, then suddenly smiled, giving me a look of quiet warmth. When Lin Nantian left the capital, the princess's people gave her a small wooden box. Inside was all the personal wealth Hua Yin had saved over the years. The princess was imprisoned, but perhaps, in some brief moment of clarity, she'd regretted what she'd done to her daughter. So, before she went completely mad, she used the last of her reason to leave everything to Lin Nantian, letting her go south to Jiangnan to find a life of her own. 3 years later, Emperor Yuan fell gravely ill. By his bedside, Fu Yuan steadily assumed the throne and the land of Daikai. As he took the imperial jade seal, he gave a cold order to the emperor, now gasping his last breaths. "Announce to the realm, the emperor is dead." Emperor Yuan stared in horror at the son he'd always thought most dutiful. The world believed Zhao Lin was loyal and filial, no one imagined he would do such a thing. He had already dismissed every servant from the Hall of Virtue. By then, I was the mistress of the inner palace, everything behind the scenes was in my hands. So, when Princess Hua Yin disguised herself as a palace maid and walked right into the Hall of Virtue, no one noticed. Emperor Yuan still clung to life, when suddenly, a length of white silk tightened around his neck. A fierce strength snapped his bones with a crack, the tide of suffocation crashed in. He thrashed and struggled, pupils rolling wide in terror as he gazed at the ghastly, enchanting face of Princess Hua Yin. The princess had already been sentenced to death by Emperor Yuan's secret order 3 years earlier, at the country estate. But he didn't know, the son he trusted most, outwardly obedient, had secretly saved her. And I had been the one hiding the princess for 3 years in the outskirts of the capital. All for this moment. The white silk became a weapon in Hua Yin's hands. As she strangled the emperor, she whispered coldly, "Husband, it hurts a bit, bear with it." On the bed, "You always soothed Hua Yin that way, didn't you?" Her eyes shone with obsession, at once childish and cruel. "Father, you broke your vows, violated all that was right, so let your daughter see you off, as an act of filial piety." By then, the emperor had already been declared dead, so no one interrupted the execution. That very night, Emperor Yuan's body was placed in a coffin. Around his neck was a tightly bound white silk, beneath the cloth, the bone had been snapped. He was the one who made the law. Those who violate chastity, those who commit incest, must die by hanging. Why should that law apply only to women? He, too, deserved to die by that very law. Princess Hua Yin, in the throes of madness, walked out of the Hall of Virtue with the blood of the late emperor on her hands, her face strangely serene. She turned, smiling gently at me and Fu Yuan. At dawn, Princess Hua Yin passed away in the outskirts of Jingzhou. As if her whole life had existed only for that one night. To me, she was never a good person. She, too, was a victim of the immortal aphrodisiac, yet she had used the same poison to destroy me, an innocent. But I understood more than anyone. I couldn't just stand by as someone once pure and kind was driven mad, became a villain, and then was judged by the very man who had once destroyed her, posturing as a righteous magistrate. How fitting, that Fu Yuan and I shared the same thought. So, I gave her a gentle ending. Allowed her to complete her final act of vengeance. Let her find peace, and leave. Fu Zhaolin ascended the throne. That very day, I was crowned empress. The century of peace under Zhao Lin's reign began from that moment. Fu Yuan knew what I wanted, and gave me the Phoenix Seal, real power. As empress, the first decree I issued as the mother of the nation. It is hereby proclaimed throughout Daikai. If a woman is driven to death for losing virtue, her violator is to be hanged. All accomplices and conspirators will be exiled 3,000 li. Those who violate young girls shall be gelded before execution. Since ancient times, the ones meant to die by white silk have never been the victims, but those who wielded the rope. Now that I am mother of the realm, the thing I wish most to sever are all the countless invisible silken cords still tightening around women's throats. The end.